Chicago glowed with millions of lights, as if trying to make up for the bone-chilling cold on that Christmas Eve. In Millennium Park, kids ran between hot chocolate stands and twinkling lights, couples snapped photos in front of the giant tree, and families hugged while sharing laughter, carols, and warm cider. In the middle of that buzz, Michael Harrison walked alone. He wore an expensive coat, polished shoes, and a cashmere scarf, but his face had no shine, and his gaze was lost among the lights. At 45, he was one of the country's most successful entrepreneurs, owner of a tech company that appeared on magazine covers and was invited to international conferences. But that night, in that place, he was nothing more than an invisible man. He sat on a bench near the Cloud Gate sculpture. From there, he watched as if viewing a movie he wasn't part of. Not a call, not a text. His phone was silent, just like his luxury condo in the Gold Coast, where a frozen dinner awaited him, one he probably wouldn't bother heating up. He remembered other Christmases, his son, Ethan, running through the living room with an electric train, his mother making eggnog, his father telling bad jokes, his sister Rebecca fighting over the last piece of pie. All of that no longer existed. After the divorce, Ethan had moved to California with his mother and her new husband. His parents had passed away barely a year apart. And Rebecca, he'd simply stopped calling. Work always came first, until one day there was no one left to call. A gust of icy wind snapped him from his thoughts. He adjusted his scarf and thought about leaving, but just as he placed his hands on his knees to stand, something stopped him. 3 little girls, identical, stood in front of him. They wore the same pink coat, fuzzy boots, and colorful hair clips, maybe 8 or 9 years old. They looked at him with a mix of curiosity and childlike determination. One of them, the one in the middle, stepped forward. "You look sad," she said, with the seriousness of someone announcing something important. "No one should be alone at Christmas." She extended a small envelope made from green cardstock, decorated with glitter and poorly glued gold stars. Michael blinked, confused. "For me?" "Yes, we made it ourselves. Sophia designed it, Emma wrote the message, and I put on the stars," the girl explained with pride. "I'm Olivia, by the way." Michael took the envelope awkwardly. The paper was slightly bent at one corner, but it was clear it had been made with care. He opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten card in childish letters. "Merry Christmas. You matter, even if it doesn't seem like it. There's always someone who loves you, even if you don't know it yet. You're not alone." His heart skipped a beat so hard he almost forgot to breathe. He stared at the message as if it were a language he'd forgotten how to read. "Do you do this for everyone?" he asked, his voice lower than he intended. "Only for people who look sad," said Sophia, the one in the center, shrugging. "You looked like one of them." Before he could say anything more, a young woman approached quickly, with a warm smile and a look somewhere between apologetic and proud. "Sorry if they bothered you. Sometimes they have no filter," she said, adjusting the girls' hats. "I'm Isabella, their mum. They do this every year, for the past 3 Christmases." Michael looked at her curiously. Isabella wasn't elegant or wearing expensive clothes, but she had that sparkle in her eyes that only someone who's cried a lot and still keeps smiling can have. "For the past 3 Christmases?" he repeated, still clutching the card. "Yes," she nodded. "That was when we lost my husband. That year I was sitting on a bench much like this one, alone, crying. Someone approached me and gave me a card like this, with words of encouragement. A stranger. I never saw them again. But that gesture saved me from completely falling apart." The girls hugged their mother around the waist. Isabella ran her hand through their hair. "Since then, we made a pact. Every Christmas, we look for someone who seems to be having a hard time, and we give them a little of that magic someone gave me." Michael didn't know what to say. He had the lump in his throat of someone who wants to speak, but fears their voice will crack. "Thank you," was all he managed to articulate. "You're welcome. Merry Christmas, Mr. Isabella looked at him, leaving space for him to complete it. Michael Harrison." She smiled. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Harrison. I hope tonight brings you something good." "Merry Christmas, Michael," the girls chorused, and then they waved goodbye in sync as if they'd practiced the gesture. Michael watched them walk away, moving between food stands and sparklers. Isabella bought them cotton candy, and one of them started singing a carol. The businessman remained seated with the card still in his hands, not noticing that his phone had buzzed with an urgent email from his assistant. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the need to check it. Instead, he looked up at the winter sky. And while Millennium Park's lights twinkled around him, he allowed himself something he'd forgotten how to do: smile. He didn't know why, but that night, something inside him had changed. And though he still didn't fully understand what it was, he knew he wasn't alone. Michael didn't sleep well that night. It wasn't insomnia or work worries. Those were already old bedmates. It was something else, something he hadn't felt in years, like a small uncomfortable spark in his chest. Not pain, but humanity. He kept staring at the card the girls had given him, placed carefully on his nightstand. He'd reread it at least a dozen times, as if its content would change with each reading. But no. The same simple words remained that had accomplished more than any therapy or spiritual retreat. No one should be alone at Christmas. At 8 in the morning sharp, yes, him, the guy who usually got up close to noon on weekends, he was already dressed and ready to go. Something inside him wanted to see them again, not out of courtesy, but because he felt he couldn't keep that gesture in his heart without doing something about it. He returned to Millennium Park, this time with coffee in hand and a ridiculous hope of finding them around. But the place was emptier. Only a few stands were dismantling, kids dragging broken piñatas, and cleanup workers collecting traces of the night before. Michael walked the same path, sat on the same bench, waited. Nothing. He remembered the name Isabella had mentioned. Isabella Martinez. Not an uncommon name, but not impossible to track either. He pulled out his phone and started searching. Social media, local results, nearby businesses, until he saw it. Sweet Home, Isabella Martinez's Artisan Bakery, a small shop in Pilsen, with positive ratings and photos of cookies decorated with Christmas shapes. Without thinking much, he called a rideshare and headed there. The contrast was immediate. From his world of loop offices and luxury condos, he now passed through streets with murals, humble facades, and family shops surviving on pure effort. The car stopped in front of a small bakery with a hand-painted sign that said, "Sweet Home," and a string of paper snowflakes hanging from the entrance. Michael took a deep breath before entering. The aroma of vanilla and cinnamon enveloped him immediately. Behind the counter, Isabella was decorating cookies with white icing. She looked up, surprised. "Michael, what are you doing here?" "Hi," he replied, a bit awkward. "I couldn't stop thinking about what you did last night. I just wanted to thank you." Isabella wiped her hands on her apron and smiled. "Wow, that doesn't happen every day." "I brought this for the girls," he said, pulling out a gift bag containing 3 children's books and small Christmas stuffed animals. "It's not much, but I thought they might like it." Isabella received the bag carefully, as if it contained something fragile. "Wait here," she said, disappearing through a door in the back. Seconds later, hurried footsteps and excited screams could be heard. "Mom said it was him," a voice shouted. The 3 girls appeared like a pink whirlwind down the hallway, throwing themselves at Michael with hugs and laughter. "You came back," Emma shouted. "And you brought presents?" asked Olivia, eyes wide. Sophia, more serious, looked him straight in the face. "Did you have breakfast yet?" "No, not yet." "Then you're eating with us. Today we're having chili, and Mom makes the best in the world." "Sophia," Isabella intervened, laughing. "Don't pressure him." "Why not?" the girl replied. "He was alone last night, and we said no one should be alone at Christmas, so we're inviting him, right, girls?" "Yes," the other 2 chorused. Michael, somewhere between amused and bewildered, looked at Isabella seeking an escape, but she simply shrugged. "If you don't have plans, you're more than welcome." He didn't know how, but he ended up accepting. Maybe it was Sophia's firmness, or Isabella's sincere gaze. Maybe it was that deep down, he wanted it more than he was willing to admit. Hours later, he was sitting at a wooden table in a modest home, with floral tablecloths and Christmas lights hung with tape on the walls. The dining room smelled of beans, spices, and cornbread. The girls ran from one side to another, fighting over who would show him first their Christmas tree made from cardboard tubes and sequins. The chili, indeed, was the best he'd ever had. There was no elegant toast, no background music selected by an algorithm. There were off-key carols, an improvised karaoke with an old speaker, and laughter that came from the soul. Isabella served him cider in a mug with reindeer drawings, and Michael held it as if it were crystal. He watched the girls fight over the candy canes and share the cookies as if they were treasures. Then something happened that he didn't expect. He laughed. Not a polite or forced laugh. A genuine chuckle, the kind that escapes when you surprise yourself happy. It sounded strange, even to him. But it was real. After the meal, they played bingo with beans as chips. Sophia won 3 times in a row and yelled, "Cheater!" when she finally lost. Emma fell asleep hugging her new stuffed animal. Olivia wanted to style Michael's hair and ended up leaving him with a crooked braid behind his ear. And he simply let them. When saying goodbye, the girls hugged him once more. "Are you coming back?" Sophia asked. Michael looked at Isabella. She said nothing, just smiled. "Yes, I'd love to." He left that house with a full heart and his face red from the cold. In his pocket, he carried another card, this time signed by all 3. "Thanks for coming, Uncle Michael." It took him a while to fall asleep that night, not from restlessness, but because he didn't want that feeling to disappear. There was something about that family, about that simple home, that reminded him of everything he'd forgotten, and everything he might still be able to recover. Michael woke up with a strange energy. He'd slept deeply like he hadn't in years. No corporate dreams, no to-do lists or presentations waiting, just the echo of laughter, off-key carols, and the taste of the best chili he'd ever had in his life. He made coffee but didn't drink it alone. That morning, for the first time in a long while, it was accompanied by something else: hope. He stopped by a stationery store and then a toy shop. He didn't choose anything expensive, it didn't seem right. He looked for things with intention: an adventure book for Sophia, who seemed to have a leader's soul, one about animals for Emma, the quietest one, and a cloth doll with long braids for Olivia, who had a dreamer's eyes. He also bought a box of artisan chocolates and 3 Christmas cards that he wrote by hand, with phrases that tried, though clumsily, to return what they'd given him without asking for anything. He arrived in the neighborhood in the afternoon. This time he didn't feel out of place. He greeted the corner store owner with a shy smile and even helped an elderly woman carry a box down from a curb. He knocked on the door softly. "Uncle Michael," the girls shouted when they opened it, as if they'd been expecting him their whole lives. His heart tightened with tenderness. Uncle. Just like that, without formality or paperwork. They'd adopted him without conditions. "I brought some little things," he said, lifting the bags. The girls squealed, threw themselves at him and dragged him inside as if he were a new toy. They opened their gifts with a mix of respect and excitement. Sophia read the title of her book aloud, as if rehearsing for a school presentation. Emma hugged hers without letting go. Olivia gave him a kiss on the cheek before naming her doll, Rachel. Isabella watched them from the kitchen, arms crossed with a serene smile. When the girls went to play, she called him with a gesture. "Some coffee? It's spiced the way it should be." "Of course," he replied, following her to the small kitchen. They sat in silence for a moment. Michael observed the details of the home: family photos in cheap but love-filled frames, children's drawings taped to the wall, old but clean utensils. Every corner had a story. "Have they always been so bright?" he asked, referring to the girls. Isabella laughed. "So intense?" "Yes, since they were born, though when their dad died, everything changed for a while." Michael lowered his gaze. "Sorry if I'm being nosy." "You're not," she said, taking a sip. "That Christmas was the worst of my life. I could barely get out of bed. Didn't even have money for a tree. I was thinking about how to fake it so I wouldn't break them too." She paused for a second, then continued. "That night, I went out walking, desperate. I sat on a bench in Grant Park, crying like a child. And then someone approached me. I never knew their name. They gave me a card with a phrase that said, 'Pain is also part of Christmas,' because it reminds us of who we love, and nothing else. They left. Michael felt a lump in his throat. And that was enough? It didn't take away the pain, but it made me feel seen, and that night I promised the girls that one day we'd do the same for someone else, that if we could change one person's day, then the pain wouldn't have been in vain. She looked him straight in the eyes. I never thought that someone would be you. Michael looked away, not from shame, but because he wasn't used to someone truly seeing him. I lost my parents years ago, then my marriage faded out. And over time, I also drifted away from my sister, from my son. I was left alone, but so busy I never noticed, until it was too late. Isabella nodded, without judging. Sometimes success makes more noise than emptiness, until the silence takes over. They both laughed as if sharing a secret language. At that moment, the power went out. A sudden blackout, as often happens in neighborhoods with old wiring. The girls screamed, but not with fear, with excitement. Candles! Carols! Sophia shouted from the living room. Isabella lit a couple of candles and placed them on the table. The room was enveloped in a warm, soft light. Michael sat next to the girls, who had already formed a small choir. They started singing Jingle Bells with more enthusiasm than pitch. Olivia clapped off rhythm, Emma moved her head as if conducting an imaginary orchestra, and Sophia corrected the lyrics her own way. Michael looked at them as if he were inside a postcard, one he never thought he'd inhabit. At the end of the carol, Olivia handed him a candle. Now you, Uncle Michael, one of your favorites. Michael swallowed. It's been so long since I sang, he stammered. Doesn't matter, Sophia said firmly. Here we sing with our hearts, not our voices. Then, with a trembling voice at first, he began to sing Silent Night. The girls followed him, and Isabella from the kitchen also joined in. In the middle of that bright darkness, surrounded by small voices and a woman who wasn't trying to save him, but to share her light, Michael felt like he was truly breathing, as if, until that moment, he'd only been surviving. When the lights came back on an hour later, no one rushed to blow out the candles. When saying goodbye, Michael crouched down to be at the girls' height. Can I come another day? Of course, all three shouted, as if the question had been absurd. Isabella walked him to the door. Before leaving, he stopped. Thank you for letting me in, not just into your house, but also into something I'd forgotten what it felt like. She responded with a look that said more than 1,000 phrases. The door is open, always. And that night, as he walked under the city lights that no longer seemed so cold, Michael understood that Christmas isn't measured by what you have, but by what you share. The sun timidly entered Michael's condo window. But unlike other mornings, it didn't bother him. He didn't cover his head with the pillow or automatically reach for his phone. He lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling with a soft smile on his lips. It was December 26th, and something inside him had changed. He got up, made coffee without rushing, and before sitting down, he looked up the contact of someone he hadn't called in months. He hesitated for a few seconds, but then pressed the call button. Hello? The voice on the other end was familiar, tired, surprised. Rebecca. It's me, Michael. A silence, not an uncomfortable one, but loaded with everything that had never been said. Mike? Everything okay? Yes. He paused, took a deep breath. I wanted to hear your voice and ask would you like to spend New Year's with me, like when we were kids? On the other end, a small choked laugh could be heard. You cooking that dry roast again that nobody wanted to eat? Michael let out a laugh. I promised to order something decent this time. Deal. Ethan's coming too. Sound good? Sounds perfect. He hung up with a smile that reached his eyes. He'd taken the first step to coming back home. Not one with walls, but one with names and memories. That same day he went to the office. It was strange being there during the holidays, but something pushed him forward. He entered the conference room with a firm step. His assistants were surprised, used to his corporate coldness. This time Michael arrived without a laptop, just a notebook in hand. I want you to hear an idea, "And I want you to tell me how we can make it a reality," he said, taking a seat. He explained his vision. Create a support fund from the company, aimed at widowed mothers, vulnerable families, people alone during the holidays. Not as charity, but as a sustained act of community. We can offer scholarships, tech support, workshops, even create partnerships with other organizations. But I want this to come from us, from the human side. There was silence. Then one of his managers raised his hand. "And what will the project be called?" Michael smiled. "No one should be alone at Christmas." That same afternoon, he took his car and returned to Pilsen. He didn't bring gifts this time, just an envelope with a proposal and a strong desire to share it. He knocked on the door. Isabella opened it, surprised but happy. "You again? Am I part of the family yet or still on probation?" She laughed. "Come in, Uncle Michael." The girls greeted him with hugs. Sophia had already read half her book. Emma asked him to help her find pictures of animals, and Olivia had made a little bed for Rachel, her doll. "I came to talk about something serious today," he said in a conspiratorial tone, "but I need everyone to listen." They sat at the table, everyone, like a small Christmas meeting. "I want to tell you about an idea, and I want you to be part of it," he began. "I'm creating a program to help families like yours. Women fighting alone, kids who give more love than they receive, people who make magic with the little they have." Isabella watched him without interrupting. "And I need an ambassador, someone to tell me what's needed, how to organize it, who to help first. Someone who doesn't see numbers but people." He placed the envelope on the table, with Isabella's name written by hand. "Would you like to?" Isabella opened it carefully. Her eyes moistened as she read. Not because of the money or the prestige, but because someone had believed in her daughters, in their story. "And what will we do?" asked Sophia, curious. "You'll be my idea team, in charge of spreading Christmas magic all year long." All three screamed with excitement, as if they'd just been named presidents of the universe. Hours later, when Michael said goodbye, he no longer did so as a visitor, but as someone who would return, part of a new story. And that night, before going home, he did something else. He went back to Millennium Park, to the same bench where he'd been alone, lost, invisible. He sat there for a moment, watching families pass by, kids running, lights twinkling. But now, something was different. He was no longer a ghost among the living. He was part of the scene. One more among those who still believe. He took out the card the girls had given him. He had it in his wallet, protected like a treasure. "No one should be alone at Christmas." He read it one last time and then put it away with a smile. He wasn't alone anymore.